and solidarity activists. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Thailand, the government's rejected an offer by anti-government protesters to enter talks after a bloody week in Bangkok that's left at least 38 protesters dead. Some fear the standoff could lead to an undeclared civil war. The protesters are mostly rural and urban poor who are part of a group called the UDD, the United Front for Democracy Against Dictatorship. More commonly, they're known as the Red Shirts. They've been occupying parts of downtown Bangkok for 2 months. The protesters are attempting to force the prime minister to step down and call new elections. Many of the Red Shirts are supporters of the former prime minister, Thaksin Shinawatra, the billionaire tycoon who was overthrown in a coup nearly 4 years ago. The tension in Bangkok intensified 5 days ago when Thai troops began using force to remove the Red Shirts from their barricaded encampments. Live ammunition was fired at unarmed protesters and journalists. In addition to the 38 protesters killed, hundreds have been wounded. The Thai government's defended the use of force, saying armed groups and terrorists tied to the Red Shirts have been attacking supporters of the government and Thai troops. Earlier today, protest leader Natawut Saiku announced the Red Shirts are willing to enter into talks overseen by members of the Thai Senate.
The United Nations has not responded to our demands so far, but the request to stop the shooting is an urgent issue which cannot wait, not even a single minute. Therefore, the UDD will accept the senator's proposal.
But the Thai government rejected the offer, saying talks would only begin when the protesters abandoned their barricaded camp in Bangkok. On Sunday, the Thai government also rejected a call by the Red Shirts for a ceasefire and UN-moderated talks.
We reject their demands for UN mediation or for them to do any activities in Thailand. No Thailand government has ever let anyone intervene with our internal affairs. We can solve our problems ourselves, but we are willing to listen.
To talk more about Thailand, we're joined by 2 guests who've been closely monitoring the situation in Thailand. Giles Ji Ungpakorn is a Thai dissident living in exile in Britain. He was a university lecturer in Thailand before having to flee after writing a book criticizing the 2006 military coup. He's a Red Shirt supporter. We're also joined by Philip Cunningham, a freelance journalist who's covered Asia for over 20 years. He taught at several universities in Thailand. His writings frequently appear in the Bangkok Post. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Philip Cunningham is joining us from Japan. Giles Ji Ungpakorn, can you describe what is happening right now in Bangkok and what the Red Shirts want?
By the way, my name is Jai. Well, what the Red Shirts want is democracy, because the present government was installed by the military, and it's actually the fruit of a military coup in 2006 and various judicial coups. So demanding fresh elections, demanding proper democratic elections is perfectly legitimate. And even though they have been occupying the center of Bangkok for 2 months, it's only a shopping center and a site for luxury hotels, yet the government has deployed snipers, assassination squads, and since the beginning of April they've actually been responsible for 67 deaths and thousands of injuries. And really the time has come for the government to order an immediate ceasefire and for them to enter into genuine talks with the Red Shirts.
And what about the latest developments, Jai? The offer of the Red Shirts to participate and the government saying no.
Well, the Red Shirts have made repeated offers to negotiate with the government, and the government really wants to shoot its way to a victory and to stay in power through the use of force. You also have to realize that this government has brought about the worst censorship ever in Thailand. It's censored all the internet, the media in all shape and form. I mean, they even attack Facebook and everything else. So the 2 things that they're using to stay in power are censorship and brutal force. And they're not prepared to actually offer the chance to the people to actually make a decision about who should run the country and in what way.
Philip Cunningham, I had said you're in Japan. You're now in Ithaca, New York. But can you give your observations on what's happening in Thailand right now?
Yes, you know, as a poet, Gil Scott-Heron said, he famously said that the revolution will not be televised. And it's being televised, but it's not a revolution. What we see in Thailand, I think, is a sham revolution, and I think it's something stirred up primarily by the billionaire tycoon in exile, who you mentioned. There are real grievances, there are real poor people, there are fault lines and sensitive areas in Thailand which are very easy to provoke. It would sort of be like Rockefeller funding riots in the ghettos if he had somehow been arrested and sent into exile or something like that. I mean, it's a really strange situation. It's a hugely tragic situation. The people are dying. They're dying for a billionaire tycoon in exile. It doesn't make sense. Does Thailand need democracy, the kind of socialism that Jai has been working for? Yes, I think that would be fine. But it has to be peaceful, and the red shirts are not peaceful.
Jai?
Well, it's nonsense to say that the red shirts aren't peaceful. They've actually been very, very disciplined and tried to maintain a peaceful demonstration in the face of the government, which actually brings armed soldiers and tanks onto the streets. Any government that tries to disperse a peaceful demonstration using armed tanks, guns, and so on, and kills 65 people, I think needs to be condemned. But I'm afraid Philip is misinformed about the red shirts. I mean, Thaksin Shinawatra, and I'm no supporter of him, I never voted for him, and have always criticized his abuse of human rights. Thaksin Shinawatra was incapable of organizing the red shirts. The red shirts were organized by former leaders of Thai Rak Thai, and they've developed into a grassroots movement. They collect money in their own communities. They run community radio stations. They have different groups. If you go to any red shirt protest, you can see the signs up of the different groups, and you can hear people making donations on the stage and so on. And they're not dying for Thaksin Shinawatra. They're not stupid peasants, ignorant peasants who don't know what they're doing. They're actually very well informed small farmers and urban workers who are incensed by the fact that their democratic rights have been robbed, and that this is part of the system that allows such inequality of wealth in Thailand.
Can I say something to that, Amy?
Yes, Philip Cunningham.
I think one thing Jai and I absolutely agree on is that it's never right to use an army to suppress the people. I think it's an extremely blunt instrument. It's crazy. It's bloody. It's violent, and that's wrong. And I completely agree with Jai that the army should not be involved in this. However, Jai and I used to live on the same street in Bangkok. We taught at the same university, but we really disagree on our analysis of the red shirts. I believe the red shirts are a fascist movement. I believe the poverty is real, the need, the hunger for a systemic change, a kind of change in Thailand is there. It's in the air. But there is nothing about the red shirts. I listened to them